Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Hello and welcome back to episode 58 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is June 1st, 2020. I am Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my sonorous co-hosts Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
And
Hello.
you're busting out the $3 words today.
It's me.
It's a good word. I like it.
It's a very good
and
word.
it is applicable to what we're talking about. Of course, before we get started, we do want to remind our listeners that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. That means if there is something in the Cosmere that you have not read and you are worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, come back, join the discussion afterwards. Trust me, you won't regret reading pretty much anything in the Cosmere. I really doubt it. Now, for tonight's episode, we are going to be discussing the various snippets of the listeners' songs from the epigrams in Part 2 of Words of Radiance. I am excited about this, guys.
It is.
I think there's there's going to be some really deep stuff that we get to dig into, and we're going to miss so many clues that Brandon's put in because we're only 3 books deep into what's eventually going to be a 10-book series. So there's all sorts of stuff that we're missing.
Yeah.
There's
a
book
lot that's
series is
hinted at.
big.
It is big. It is that is a good adjective for this series. Now, for those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you it's possible for listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InnkeepersTable. We record episodes of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So go ahead, join us, take an active part in the discussion, and just, come along for the ride.
And make us giggle. It's fun.
I like to believe that I have a manly guffaw,
But you can make me giggle. How's that sound?
or at least a chortle.
I have a snicker giggle thing that goes on. I
sniggle?
will admit it. No, that starts to get into, I think, in trouble areas that might get censored.
Snicker giggles. Aren't those like a kind of cookie?
Snickerdoodles.
I want any cookie. I don't care if it's named wrong.
Oh, man. Now I want cookies.
The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you do want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Even pledging $1 or $2 per episode really helps us out as we work to improve the show. Patrons will get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere and pretty much anything else with other listeners and us as well. It's a great community. We've got a lot of great discussions going on over there, and you'll get also early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and other good stuff. So, again, special thanks to our patrons. Y'all are amazing. We enjoy you.
And I'm hoping to have stuff ready for people in the next month or so for extra bonus stuff. So that'll be cool.
Indeed.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's dig in. There are a lot of... Basically, we're having a poetry circle tonight. And so,
Poetry readings. I haven't known these in ages.
for our audio listeners who can't hear, Jordan is rolling his eyes wide and deep, it would seem.
No, sorry, just trying to solve issues. It's fine. Keep going.
We're good.
So
one person in chat actually asked if it was Blackthorn United and said, out of curiosity, when you read these epigraphs, what song do you have in your head for the tune? And I guess I just read them as poems. I don't think of the song. So I guess I'm far too human.
I think of them poetically as well. Mm-hmm. I don't have a tune. It's just sort of the rhythm of the earth. As you know.
I can't for some of them I just can't get a rhythm for. I try and I don't know.
So here's the thing. I got my degree in English, and poetry is actually something that I really enjoyed. And so I just sort of try and find the rhythm of the song itself that Brandon kind of put into it. Now, I'm not saying I'm good at that. I'm saying I enjoy that. Those are two very different things. But
yeah, poetry was not always my favorite when I was doing my English major. But there were some authors who I did really like their poetry. But I think I just read too much World War I poetry and too much Irish depressing poetry and things. And so...
Yes, I, of course, know the difference between these things and am totally understanding.
Depressing things are depressing.
The thing about poetry is that even if there's no melody, there's still a musicality to it. And so... And with the listeners, they talk more about rhythms than they do about melodies. Yeah. And so I don't necessarily really expect there to be a melody to this. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like they don't necessarily need a melody for it to be musical.
Yeah.
And so okay, so what I did though is I actually in the book itself, these are in all sorts of weird orders mixed up because a lot of times they match kind of the chapter that they come before. What I've done is I've actually organized them by song in order.
True. Yeah, I saw that.
So this is a very different order than they actually are in the book. So the first thing I want to talk about is there are a few different songs that are listed. At the very beginning in the book, it was all songs of listing. It was all the listener song of listing. And it looks like for basically that one, it's going through and it's describing very simply the different forms.
Yeah.
The different forms that the listeners take. And
because they wrote them down so they could try and remember them when they knew they were going to lose a lot of them and then have to rediscover them, right? That's part of what sparked this.
Did they write them down? I don't recall
or
there being a written form of it.
Well, maybe not write down, but they kept a record, oral or written, or
and the listener's tradition is very, very much oral.
Yeah,
it was recited and sung, but it was very much an oral tradition.
Well, don't we have these things from the Dawn Chant? Like this, like in universe, that's how the humans got these.
I don't recall that.
Oh man, I'm gonna look that up because I do not remember, and that's gonna bug me now.
This is the fun thing about having an enormous series that's part of another even bigger series. Is there's so much stuff that it is easy to forget.
So much in
to the
there.
point where I think that Brandon forgets some of this stuff even.
Yeah, he has people who help him for that.
Keep that's
talking.
what.
It's going to take me a minute to see if I can find it.
Okay, but so I don't remember. I think this is just simply their oral tradition. I don't recall a written version of these anywhere. But I will fully admit that I could have just blanked on that. There's only so much space in my head, and and stuff gets squeezed out from time to time. But then, so you have the listener song of listing, and then the next one I believe that we see is the listener song of winds, which only has one stanza that we see, and so we'll talk about that when we get to it. Then there's the listener song of histories, which feels like a kind of a telling. Again, we only get two stanzas of this, but it's kind of a telling of what happened when the listeners sort of started to fall, to stop, to become the Parshendi.
Yes. Become, not meek form, it's dole form. Or
right.
Form?
Well,
slave form is what they call it.
Yeah.
Well, I think slave form and dull form are slightly different, aren't they?
No.
Because dull form, I believe with dull form, they actually keep some because they go into dull form, but the ones who are in slave form, they're completely
they're
unaware.
even worse off than that. That's right. Because
that's kind of how I interpreted it.
I thought that was synonymous, but again, it's been a while.
You know what?
I think dull form, because dull form is kind of what they use to pretend to be Parshman, but I believe that...
Yeah, dull form's different.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's similar, but it's...
Basically,
they're
you
taller.
don't take dull form unless you have no other form to take, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the form that the bridge listener took?
Yes, because
So
he was a spy.
He was in dull form, but they thought he was in slave form, but he was actually in dull form.
They just thought he was a Parshman.
Yeah. So, okay. We're keeping this all straight.
Okay, then there's the Listener Song of Secrets. Now, the Listener Song of Secrets seems to be listing the forms of power, the ones that kind of tie them to the unmade, to their gods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the last one, I believe, was
Songs of War and the Songs
Okay, then there's
of
the Song of Wars, which again is sort of historical, and then the Song of Revision. So there's a few of these we only get one stanza of, and we'll just discuss that as we get to it. And then there's the Listener Song of Spren, which kind of fits in with the history, and that's a really interesting one. I'm excited to kind of get to that one. But let's go back to the Listener Song of Listing.
Okay.
If I can get it to scroll up.
So the first one was the fifth stanza is how they list it, and it's mate form.
Yep.
Do you want me to read that one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so mate form meek, for love to share. Given to life, it brings us joy. To find this form, one must care. True empathy one must employ.
So the thing that I find fascinating about the way these work is it doesn't... It talks about how they kind of... I think this has to do with actually attracting the spren that they bond. That puts them into the proper form.
Yeah.
And so by accessing true empathy, it brings whatever spren is necessary for this form. Is that how y'all see it?
Yeah, that would feel... Because it feels like this is like the natural way that they would do it. Like, and because before they had the spren trapped in... the stones, jewels. They had to just hope that they got the form that they wanted, and I think this was kind of to help guide them to, if you want to get X, you need to be in this kind of mind state,
Which makes sense, because that's kind of how spren respond in the world is, if X is happening, these spren show up. They just kind of do.
Well, it's very much like how Dalinar not Dalinar, how his wife. Paladin? Why am I blanking?
Navani.
Blanked on the name out of nowhere. She talks about how do you get a spren into a gem. You have to lure it with something that is familiar, that's inviting. And so these emotions are important because they have a physical gem that is their heart. And they need to do this in order to lure the correct spren. And so, because we see Eshonai trying to do this when she's taking storm form for the first time. And she has, I can't remember the specifics, but she was remembering, okay, Venli said I have to, do this, and trying to attract the right spren.
Right. Well, except that she already had the right spren.
Not for storm
she had
form.
it in For Stormform, she had it in a gem.
Yeah, she has it in a gem, but she has to get it into her now. So
to bond with her. Yes.
Yeah, and so they need to. So it sounds like what they do is they first make sure that the spren is there by having it in a gem heart or gem in some way, and then because it's close, if you offer it something better, a gem heart, you can get it in there.
Right.
It's basically like giving a child a cookie.
If you give a mouse a cookie... No, that's a whole other thing. If you give a Parshindi a spren... Okay, so the next one is Warform. So, Warform is worn for battle and reign, claimed by the gods, given to kill. Unknown, unseen, but vital to gain. It comes to those with the will. So again, it feels like that's kind of what attracts the Warform spren is through willpower, through.
And
So
probably
basically,
kind
this
of
is the
neat-
Green Lantern spren.
It is. No, that one's interesting. I just that line about unknown, unseen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is it unseen? I don't understand.
Is it perhaps because we don't know what spren do a lot of these, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I wonder if this is a spren that they can't see, but they can see spren.
So here's the thing. Claimed by the gods, given to kill. So we know about the Parshendi gods. When they refer to their gods, they're talking about the unmade.
Yeah.
So the fact that Warform is claimed by the gods, it's just, I don't exactly understand.
Does that mean
what,
that,
is it necessarily
that something else? I wonder if something else actually is in charge of giving them Warform or first gave them Warform, but the unmade said it kind of took over that.
That's
or they
possible.
said, or they claimed credit.
Jordan, what were you saying?
Well, is God specifically the unmade? Because they reference unmade later in the songs themselves.
When they talk about their gods, I believe they're referring to the unmade.
It was.
I thought because they say unmade with a capital U later on in different songs. I thought that like the spren themselves were the gods, like little G.
I don't believe so. I don't think so.
Let's look at the Coppermind, because we all just need to
Chat, does anybody have a comment on that? We'll come back to that, though. Let's go on to...
We can't be sure.
I got something here.
Okay.
After the expulsion where mankind destroyed the Tranquiline Halls, ancient sceners were ordered by gods, perhaps honor and cultivation, to help give them refuge to Roshar. But then later on, according to the listener's Song of Histories, after the singers felt spren betrayed them, the listeners turned to other gods. This song, however, could be warped by history.
And so those other gods, I believe, are the unmade.
Well, but so that's the thing, is it's unclear the way that this is being written.
Because history is very fluid depending on who's writing it down and recording, and oral histories are even harder to keep straight because you have to keep it in your memory, which I think their memory for songs and rhythms is a lot better than ours would be. Mm-hmm. But over that much time, it can still be distorted, especially if you get unmade involved and other things.
Well, and they actually highlight that because some of these songs are remarkably similar to one another, and it smacks of Brandon trying to show us that it's very, very similar to Mistborn, where we see that the words are being corrupted by ruin. I think he's hinting that the oral traditions are getting twisted a little bit.
Another thing is, I'm not an expert in Greek mythology and stuff, but a lot of those stories and myths were given in oral tradition, and they had like a pattern they would follow too, to help make it easier to remember them. Like it would have this kind of sentence and then these two, and then it would have another kind of sentence. And so so I'm wondering if that's also something he might be employing with how there are similar lines and phrases and how the rhythms work out for the different songs.
It's possible.
Well, and then the other thing that further complicates it, these songs are by the ancient
listeners.
The ancient listeners, and we don't get to see any of those, and so what they might call a god could be very different than the modern understanding of what we are. Because we know the Herdasians, who are somehow related to them, worship spren and call them little gods. And so, is that something they inherited? Is it something that was corrupted from the original religion? Who knows?
Yeah.
There's a lot of... these songs are all over the place. It's very interesting, and because what one refers to could refer to multiple things, and maybe could even multiple things at the same time, for all we know, with the way that their religion works.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, like, much like the shards, not shards, the crystals that we went into, the gemstone archive that we went into last time. I think we're going to look back at this and be like,
Yeah,
that was the hint,
I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jordan, you want to take us to the work form one, 19th stanza?
Sorry, I was looking at others. There we go, 19th stanza. Work form, warn for strength and care, whispering spren, breathe at your ear. Seek first this form, its mysteries to bear. Found here is freedom from fear.
So this one I think is really interesting. The line, seek first this form. Because wasn't this the first one that they found after...
after having mate form or was mate form after?
Well, like they...
I think they discovered this one first, maybe?
I think they did too. And it says, seek first this form, its mysteries to bear. Found here is freedom from fear, which makes sense because, being in dull form or slave form, just the ability to, again, work form worn for strength and care, the ability to do things, the ability to care, that, right there
huge.
breaks out of a type of fear. Again, that's my interpretation. If y'all have something else.
Yeah, I mean, feeling trapped like that mentally and physically and all of that being able to be in work form instead would be a huge change and a lot more freedom and relieving and things.
Yeah, I've mentioned before that I'm diabetic, and there have been times where my blood sugar was incredibly low, to the point where it was very strange. My body would not respond to what I was thinking. And it it felt like being trapped. So I'm just imagining how this would be is, like almost being trapped in your own mind, not being able to actually respond properly.
Yeah,
knowing
I was, all of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go.
I went into shock once, I think, maybe twice. But the one time I remember I had a bike accident and I went over the handlebars and scraped up my elbow or my wrist pretty rough, and I was in shock, and thankfully nothing really bad happened or anything like that, but like the paramedics were talking to me and stuff, and they're like, are you okay, do you want to go in the ambulance and stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, do I want to go in the ambulance? I just could not process anything. I was that out of it. And so I can only imagine that's to a small degree what that would be like you were saying, Bill. It's freaky.
For me, it was like I was in the room and my parents were talking to me. They were asking me questions and I would answer them, but I wouldn't say anything. Like I'd answer them in my head and they'd ask again and I'd be like, I just told you, but I couldn't act. It was, and so you can only imagine what being in dull form would have been like. And so so found here is freedom from fear. That makes so much sense.
I also remember, I want to say it was one of Esh and I's interludes where she discovered some of the some of the listeners had taken slave form, and they said, well, at least in this form, the humans won't kill us.
Right.
And I just think here is freedom from fear, and there's sort of I'm wondering if there's like a second level of fear that they're talking about is they actually have control over their life at that point. And so they give away, like, I almost view it the same way as Dalinar talking about you can't have my pain, where slave form sort of gives up the pain. Dull form, you're taking up the pain again because you are smart enough to know what you don't know.
Dull form or work what?
Dull form, like, so because work form is talking about found here is freedom from fear. I think of dull form as it's the form of fear because you finally understand what you don't know, whereas in slave form you give it up, and so you're letting someone else drive the ship. But there's a sort of fearlessness to that. You don't have to do anything.
I don't know. Slave form is almost, in my opinion, it's almost surrendering to fear.
Well, it's one of those. That's why I think it's one of those. You don't have the fear, like, because you just exist, like, and that's all it is. It's a numbness. Dull form is where
it's apathy.
Yeah.
So slave form is apathy, and then dull form is inability to. I don't have the right word.
You have the knowledge of it. You have the knowledge of what you should be, like. You can feel like what you should be able to do, but you can't quite get there.
See, I almost feel like that's what slave form is.
I don't ever hear them talk about how afraid they are in slave form. It's just sort of,
Well, I remember,
they just
I remember
exist.
when Kaladin is talking to the refugees and they were in slave form, and the father talks about how he'd have to watch his wife get sold
They
away.
weren't in slave form with the refugees. The refugees were...
Before that, previously they had
before
been in
that, he
slave
was
form.
talking about having been in slave form.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Sorry. So yeah, so he's talking about having been in slave form, and I can't remember if the way he talks about it makes it that he's fully he was fully cognizant of it, or if he's realizing now how terrible it was, or after he was out of it, he finally was able to.
I feel like
I
feel like it's kind of a combination.
It could be probably realized it, but he couldn't think far enough about it with the same depth to fully realize
They were in
how
dull
terrible
form
it
when
was.
Kaladin runs into them, though, right?
No.
No. What are they in then, if they're not dull form?
Because they weren't in
They
war
had been...
form.
Because it's
No,
not
but
war.
they had been... I think it's probably something closer to work form. I don't think we see specifically which...
Yeah, because
We're told which form they're in. But they are brought out... They're not in dull form.
Yeah.
They're not, yeah, because they can think and talk and seem normal-ish, if that makes sense. I don't know. But yeah, I don't remember. They're not nimble.
Work form
They're
sounds
not
the most
mid-
likely.
I think they were... Yeah, I think work form is what they're brought into.
It might be, yeah.
Well, and not that Kaladin would know. He's not an expert
Right.
on forms.
He's not an expert, yeah.
But it just...
Okay.
It almost feels like work form is their basic form.
Yeah, especially as they're saying seek first this form. So, I mean, it's kind of this is the norm, this is the standard, this is the norm.
Well, and the interesting
start
thing
at.
about work form that I like is the fact that they it actually talks about how they find it difficult to commit violence and don't like confrontation in that form. And you notice that with Kaladin because they're sort of like they're making the threats, but Kaladin can tell they don't have the force behind them.
They're not going to actually do it.
And so it's interesting that because they're like I love it when they I can't remember whose chapter it is. I think it's Eshonai's, where they talk about just how humans are all their forms at all times.
Yeah, and they're like, it's so confusing and terrible. How could you focus on anything? Because they complain about mate form, and they're like, oh, I hated being in that form. That was terrible. You know,
I couldn't
I was
focus
so
on
distracted. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's go to stanza 27. Amy, you want to take this one?
Nimble, right?
Yep.
Nimble form has a delicate touch, gave the gods this form to many. Though once defied by the gods they were crushed, this form craves precision and plenty.
So this is the form that Vinley is in when we first meet her, I believe.
Is she? No, she's...
I thought she was
in
scholar form.
She's scholar form.
No, they
Or-
hadn't discovered scholar form. She was in nimble form because it was the closest they had to scholar
That's right.
form.
She was looking for scholar form
Yes.
or art form.
That's
Right.
right.
But they hadn't
long
discovered it
books.
yet. Nimble form was the closest they had. And so
That's
this
right,
is the
'cause
form
they
that she
were
was in
able
when we
to
first
do
met her.
More things, yeah. I think she turns into scholar form off screen, so we don't notice the transition as much.
They didn't have scholar form.
They don't have it at all? I thought they get it at one point.
She was looking for scholar form. The next thing she found was storm form.
Yeah, because the council had slave form, dull form,
Work form, mate form.
And nimble.
And-
No, and not nimble form.
And war
Because
form.
she was the only one in war form. Yeah.
War form?
yeah, because it was the
Okay, that
council
would
of
be
five, right?
5, and that's 5,
Yeah.
yeah, 5.
And so and so I just remember because that was Eshonai was like she said I discovered a new form, and Eshonai was like scholar form, art form, and she's like storm form, and she's like no, bad.
No, that's not what we
No.
wanted. No.
Don't be doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because I just think of nimble form kind of as like a dancer almost. Which
Let's
makes
see,
sense.
delicate touch.
Right, but again, that would make sense though then, because to be able to respond to that agility, you also have to think more quickly.
There'd be...
Well, and one of the things is it doesn't actually, according to the Coppermind anyway, it's not about, it makes it so that the mind is no longer impeded, which all the other forms, because, work form doesn't like confrontation. And then war form is aggressive. This is the form that lets you be free from those things. But at the same time, it sounds like it gives you a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not arrogance, but...
A little bit. Hubris.
Hubris. And you're searching for something. You're...
Ambition?
Ambition, that's the word I'm looking for. Because it says it seeks... It seeks, what was the line? It
craves precision and plenty.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just... I think we were a little bit off on our listing of the forms. I just looked up the Council of Five. We have dull form, mate form, war form, work form, and nimble form.
Okay, not slave form. That's right.
Slave form is not. Dull form is in there.
Yeah,
but slave form is
dull.
not.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Double counted something there.
Yeah. So just to make sure that we don't get angry emails or tweets.
Because I thought there were more than just Venli who was in nimble form. There were a few.
Yes.
The majority were work form.
Nimble form, I believe, was the newest that they'd added.
Yeah.
At that point, though.
And for whatever reason, I was so sure it was scholar form, but apparently I was wrong. It's been too long.
But yeah, so gave the gods this form to many, though once defied by the gods they were crushed. What the heck happened?
Yeah, that...
Like, again, I feel like this is one of those things we're going to look back after reading a bit more and be like, oh.
My gut instinct tells me that this might be originally the form. Like, I'm imagining a repetition of history where a void spren approaches someone in nimble form, trying to get them to, hey, take these other forms that you're supposed to do. And they, unlike Venli, had the presence of mind to realize, no, that's going to be... That's the wrong path.
That's a bad
and
choice.
Thus they
were in...
Like, I could definitely see, like... Because the thing is, nimble form, what do you use it for? Because right now, look, I can't find a... It seems to me sort of like dull form, where, like, once you find work form, why would you be in dull form? So what's nimble form good for? It says they have delicate touch. My thought is maybe in war they could be something like bowmen or something like that.
Or they would be the assembly. Well, you'd have work form for like assembly line. Well, and farming and things
work
like
form
that.
is for strength and care, so maybe more precision work, with maybe sewing and stuff like that. But then again, they have carapace, so do they need sewing?
So they wear something still, don't they? I thought they were. I thought they did.
I don't believe so.
You know what? I could have sworn they had something.
I mean,
okay,
the well shard plate if they have it.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I could have sworn they had clothes.
I believe they had clothes when they came to the human, just specifically for.
Just because humans
wore
them.
I believe the carapace and everything kind of removes the need
for it.
Okay, so let's move on to 33rd stanza. Mediation form. Mediation form made for peace, it said, form of teaching and consolation. When used by the gods, it became instead a form of lies and desolation. Okay, so this one, what they're describing sounds like envoy form. And so, like, with the forms of power, you remember how they kind of have weird emotions. They feel unexpected rhythms. Rather each of the rhythms kind of feels you have the rhythm of spite rather than the rhythm, and there's the rhythm of disdain and disgust and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like envoy form is kind of a corrupted version of mediation form. It says when used by the gods, it became instead form of lies and desolation. And that's kind of what Venli is in once she goes into envoy form and she's speaking to all the crowds.
Well, it's because any form of diplomacy, if done with a little cynicism, becomes surreptitious, and so diplomats can lie through their teeth all the time, and so I like that mediation form for peace. It's said. I love that it's said, but really, is it? Come on.
And so it's basically saying it was corrupted. Made for peace, it said, form of teaching and consolation. When used by the gods, it became. And so it's like originally it was intended for this, but it was corrupted and used. Honestly, mediation form might be envoy form, I think.
I almost wonder if envoy form has a little extra something to it. Maybe. But...
See, I almost feel like the base form itself was corrupted, but this is all sorts of speculation.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't know, because the normal forms are supposed to be done with normal spren, not the void spren. And so it could very well be that, you a slightly different, spren, but it's a void spren, gets you envoy form, whereas the correct spren gets you mediation form.
Possibly.
And so we already know, we've already seen a lot of evidence that shows, at the very minimum, because we see void binders have some very similar powers to the Knights Radiant in some ways. And so I'm willing to bet that there is some one-to-one going on here. And it just changes things slightly.
Base forms.
Perhaps. Yeah. I like my pet theory, so I'm going to stick with it, but...
I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like to me that there's an extra something to envoy form versus mediation form.
Possibly.
But because all we really know about mediation form is these four little lines, so it's hard to be 100% sure.
I'm just thinking, like, it's not a stretch, because they talk about disdain, to that rhythm. It's a similar rhythm to, rebuke or something like that.
And it almost feels like, I feel funny.
Just a little bit of extra syncopation.
Yeah. I feel like I'm comparing it to Pokemon too much in the way, but like it almost feels like they're just building upon it, like with the evolutions of Pokemon, because that's what keeps coming to mind. My kids like Pokemon, as you can tell. I do too, but anyway. So that's what
Pokemon?
I keep. It's mediation form. Yeah.
Mediation form.
Okay. Jordan, you want to take us into the next one?
Yeah,
I feel like you'll appreciate.
Personally, I thought we were going to stick on here with the Pokemon theory, but okay. Let's see. Scholar form shown for patience and thought. Beware its ambitious innate. Though study and diligence bring the reward, loss of innocence may be one's fate.
It's kind of a cynical
Yeah.
thought, but it also makes sense. Like, you know, with scholar form, with research, it's almost a jaded mindset.
It kind of reminds me of like I can't remember where I heard this from, but like having, if you know, knowledge without morality turns into such and such, and you know, like, and I can't remember where the comparison came from, but like it was saying if you get taught by this kind of teacher versus this other kind of teacher, then it makes you more emotionally, morally, whatever, kind of focused on it, versus if you're just about the facts, then it can make you.
This makes a ton of sense. What you're saying?
Yeah, I'm wishing I can't. What's the quote?
Well, but the reason it makes a ton of sense is, again, humans are always in all their forms at the same time. They are not. So what they're getting, it sounds like to me, is a pure logician form that isn't tempered by the other forms at the same time, like we have. And so, think
you have the Machiavellian.
Yes, and that's what it sounds like to me. Well, think of Yesna when she's talking about kill them all. You know, it's a pure logic move, but at the same time, it's devoid of any sort of compassion. And it's scholar form. It sounds to me, it doesn't have the compassion, and so this is why in their social structure they have to have the other forms tempering the opinions.
And have the council, and have the council to go, no, you're not thinking about this emotional need or this, how it's going to affect the community compared to just seeking pure knowledge, or vice versa.
Because a lot of times the very logical move will do something that just ends in, you know, everyone just killing each other, because it's all becomes a power game. And that's all it is. It becomes just about hierarchy and being on the top. And so
the other thing,
fine.
The other thing is that with it, you know, when you look at Adonalsium and how it's been split into these shards, that's kind of how it goes. I mean, Odium is as I believe Hoyt calls it, the wrath of God. Is it Hoyt who calls it?
I think
that?
it was Frost's letter.
Frost,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
But without anything else, and so devoid, like in a vacuum, that by itself can become very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And this, so scholar form in a similar mindset, if not properly tempered, can bring that loss of innocence. Mm-hmm. The other thing is these stanzas are kind of like a description to, it's listing out these different forms to somebody who hasn't yet chosen a form and is trying to. This is saying, okay, here are the pros and the cons. Scholar form, it grants you patience. It grants you deeper thought.
You get
it
ambition,
does hold ambition inside of it. And you will be rewarded, but there is a cost to this. So just be wary when you're going in.
Yeah, well, especially for whoever the first person is to get these forms, you're going to be confronted with things that you aren't ready for, that no one can tell you about. And so, they talk about, I didn't like mate form because I couldn't think. The only reason they can say that is because they've had other forms where they could think just fine. Like, let's say they didn't get work form first. Say by some, random thing, they got mate form first. They would think of mate form as, wow, I can think so much clearer. They're constantly distracted, but they can still think much clearer than dull form.
And whatever else, yeah.
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Exactly. And so getting a new form is suddenly getting a new kind of vision, but without any of the experience to temper whatever that is.
It really reminds me of kids and like how little kids go, oh, I found this new great skill. This is so great. And the adult can look at it and go, no, yeah, it's great. You can bounce the ball off the wall. But if you bounce it the wrong way, you're going to break that thing over there or hit yourself in the head or whatever else. But the kid is so focused on, this is so great, and I've gotten to this level, that they don't have the upper level thinking or whatever else to think farther ahead and know that doing that is bad or whatever. And so the different forms, like you were saying, kind of, that's what just kept going through my head.
Just stick the electrical, the fork in the electrical socket.
It'll be great, guys.
They only need to do it one time. They'll learn to not do that again.
Oh, man. All right, Amy, let's move on to the 90th stanza.
Okay. Art form applied for beauty and hue. One yearns for the songs it creates. Most misunderstood by the artist, it's true. Come the spren to foundation's fates. I'm not sure what to make of. I have no idea
how to interpret
the
this.
The last line, really, I don't know where to take that.
Most misunderstood by the artist.
By the artist, it's true. So I'm sitting there going, well, if it's art form, they should be understood by artists.
Most misunderstood by the artist.
I know, that's the part that makes it really weird. And then Foundation's Fates. I'm not sure what that's referring to either.
Can I get slightly meta here with this?
Go for it. We're going.
So this sounds to me a little bit like if you've ever heard of the concept death of the author. Where, for those who've never heard of this, it's the idea that the author has no say on what the actual meaning of something is, because what it means is interpreted by whoever's reading it, and that's the real meaning. Because the author may have an idea, but that doesn't mean the reader's vision is invalid.
Yep. There's a whole literary theory behind that.
Yes, and so Brandon has talked about death of the author because people have asked him, I got this out of your book, and and he's had people from completely different backgrounds get completely different things from the exact same character, and Brandon's like, I don't have that in my character.
Okay.
But one of the things he said is he tries to stand back from that, because just because that's not what it means to him doesn't mean that it invalidates whatever this incredibly life-altering realization this character brought for them. And so Brandon tends to stand on the side of, nothing complete, because Brandon doesn't tend to deal in absolutes. He shows you why that's a problem with characters. He's not a Sith. But he... So I think this is what this is actually talking about, is the artist makes something and says, this is what it means. And it's like, but it's most misunderstood by the artist. And you ever heard, like... I think the best example, I can't think of a specific at the moment, but you ever had something where you read like a study and someone says, oh yeah, and that's why it's this, this, and this. And you look at the data they read and you're just like, how? How could you possibly misread this story this poorly?
So it reminds me of Tolkien and how people would took Lord of the Rings and were like, oh, well, you're obviously saying it's about this. And he said, no.
If you've ever read anything by Mark Twain, at the beginning of, I believe it's Huckleberry Finn, he's like, if you're looking for deeper meaning, don't, it's just like...
No, it's not here.
He talks about how if somebody tries to interpret something out of this, then they should be taken out and hung, and it's just like, okay, well then. And of course, people start interpreting that.
And I've also heard of stories of like sometimes teachers or professors saying like going and making this big long statement or theory about an author says X, and then the author will come in and the professor doesn't know it's the author, and the author says no, it means this other thing, and then the professor keeps arguing with them, and it's just kind of interesting seeing how the different forms of art are misinterpreted, and I hadn't thought about it that hard yet. But,
so that's sort of how I read
sense.
it, is that it might be a reference to death of the author as a concept.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
I don't know. My personal favorite of the story Amy told me is still the XKCD, where God looks down upon Earth and sees Wikipedia, and he's like, oh my goodness, this thing is just, it's riddled with errors. Okay, I'm fixing this thing. And God sits down, and it's all a Wikipedia, and he's like, all right, it's done. What the? And all his things are flagged, and it says citation needed.
Right.
It's still one of the best.
Okay, let's move on to the final stanza. Dull form dread, with the mind most lost, the lowest, and one not bright. To find this form, one need banish the cost. It finds you and brings you to blight. I mean, it feels like this is kind of self-explanatory.
I'm not sure. I don't understand one need banish the cost. I think I may be taking that too literally.
This goes back to my interpretation when we were talking about slave form or dull form, or where it's just one need banish the cost. It's almost like you're giving up that autonomy.
Well, I thought the cost was the spren. Isn't that what they need for the forms?
That's possible. So perhaps dull form means they have no spren bonded.
The thing that interests me is the fact that these songs are being written for the next generation type of thing. Mm-hmm. So why would they tell you this about dull form? And why would suddenly all the... Like, I just think of, how did the listener suddenly forget all these forms when whatever they did to Ba'Auto Mishram in binding her suddenly reduced them to slave form? My thought and my theory is that they had been working with Odium's forces for so long, they had forgotten how to do the basic forms. And so that
they had been using the void forms.
Yeah, the regal forms. And
void light.
And so basically they suddenly are shunted into slave and dull form, and because they've been doing it for so long, they don't know how to get back to the basic forms that they should know how to do.
They're not able to pass those songs down.
And so that's my current theory, and that's why it finds you and brings you blight. It finds you, not you can seek this one out. It's just...
This is the default. This is
level 1 character with no class.
Where you get broken back to it,
You are now an NPC.
Yep. All right, Jordan. Let's move into the Listener Song of Winds. This is the only stanza in the Listener Song of Winds.
All right. Stormform is said to cause a tempest of winds and showers. Beware its powers, beware its powers. Though its coming brings the gods their night, it obliges a blood-red spren. Beware its end, beware its end.
Though its coming brings the gods their night. Is this a prophecy?
I wonder if it's not referencing the Everstorm, right?
Well, I mean, the Stormform is what created the Everstorm.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of Parshendi who had gone into Stormform,
and they're
and working together, they
song.
created the Everstorm and sent it against the human armies.
Mm-hmm. And then it kept going around.
It's
Right.
interesting that the Stormform, or the Everstorm, lasts forever. It's almost like whatever they did was almost like it was punching a hole in the cognitive realm to bring this thing into creation. It's not something that needs to constantly be refueled or something.
Mm-hmm. Or it recharges itself as it's going or something. It's self-sustaining.
Which
Tinfoil hat.
Okay.
Tinfoil hat on, though, that last line, beware its end, beware its end. They have the Everstorm. What if, when the Everstorm stops, something bad happens? It's one of those, it's causing a lot of trouble, but stopping it triggers the apocalypse.
Well, the other thing is, its coming brings the gods their night. And so if we take the theory of gods being the regular spren, it brings their night, where they can get rid of them by getting rid of humans. And so
Again,
it's the gods their night. It's specific because it can't be. It's either giving the gods their night, as in it's a good thing for them, and it's the unmade, and they need darkness or whatever, or it's a antagonistic thing, and because at night that's the bad time for most normal things. And it's one of these things I love, is how it could be read both ways.
See, I see it as its coming brings the gods their night. It's the beginning of the end. This is what triggers the last desolation. And, that's sort of the beginning of the end. Exactly. It obliges, though its coming brings the gods their night, that's a good thing. It obliges a blood red spren, beware its end, beware its end. And just, again, when the Everstorm is over, bad things, man. Game over, man.
The other thing that comes to mind for me for beware its end is if you follow what the blood red spren, the void spren, right, is leading you to, it's going to lead you to odium.
Very
and
possibly.
Everything else associated with that. And so that's the other thing that came to mind for me, and that's just my...
Well, I love the word oblige there, because oblige tends to infer a certain amount of servitude and obsequiousness, where you're trying to please it. And I think about Venli's relationship with, I don't remember that spren's name, but the void spren that showed her everything. And how she was always like, you obey me. And he's like, okay, listen here, buddy.
I played nice, but now I'm done because you're not.
You have no power here.
Yeah.
Okay. The Listener Song of Histories. Amy, you want to take us into the 12th stanza?
All right. 'Tis said it was warm in the land far away when Voidbringers entered our songs. We brought them home to stay, and then those homes became their own. It happened gradually, and years ahead 'twill be said 'tis how it has to be.
Okay, guys, this was foreshadowing that we didn't understand until a book later.
Yeah, I don't even remember reading this.
Like this is heavy foreshadowing right here. When Voidbringers entered our songs, they're talking about the humans.
Yeah.
It was warm in the land far away. That would be
Mm-hmm.
Shinovar. When Voidbringers entered our songs, we brought them home to stay, and then those homes became their own. It happened gradually, and years ahead 'twill be said 'tis how it has to be.
Mm-hmm. So things turned on them.
Like, this is the big reveal of Oathbringer.
Yeah,
but this is in part 2 of Words of Radiance.
And you don't click into it. You're like, what? I don't know. What's going on? And
Dadgummit, Brandon.
I wonder if people did pick up on it, but I don't know. I didn't see it, but I wasn't as good at looking at all the stuff online,
I do remember some people had predicted that humans were the Voidbringers.
this is probably one of the main clues that they used.
Because looking at it, you're like, how did I not see that? It's right there, now that we know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, once they tell you, it's hard to figure out, why you didn't know exactly what they told you.
Well, it's like a Where's Waldo. Once you find where he is, it's
like, how did I not see that?
Girlie, he's there. Dude needs to get some new outfits.
Yeah. Okay, so for the next one, 127th stanza of the listener's song of histories. This one, I've noticed it pairs with another one later on. So I'm gonna go for both of them. The first one, smoke form for hiding and slipping between men, a form of power like human surges, bring it round again. Though crafted of gods, it was by unmade hand, leaves its force to be but one of foe or friend. Now, that sounds very similar to another one. It's the 51st stanza of the listener's song of Secrets. Secrets. So, smoke, again, the first line is almost identical. Smoke form for hiding and slipping tween men, a form of power like surges of spren. Do we dare to wear this form again? It spies. Crafted of gods, this form we fear. By unmade touch, its curse to bear. Formed from shadow, and death is near. It lies.
This just makes me think of light weaving. Not that
a little bit.
Not that light weaving actually turns you into smoke, but that's what I keep thinking of.
I can see the comparison.
Some interesting
talking about
differences that you can't hear when you read it. The 51st stanza capitalizes men, whereas the 127th has it lowercase. The 127th stanza capitalizes unmade, whereas the 51st has it lowercase.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing, a form of power like surges of spren, while in the other one it's like surges of men.
Like human surges.
Like human surges.
So this is my reading of it. The 127th stanza sounds like it's the corrupted version of this to me. Because, like, human surges, saying, no, those are their surges. But we already know, because Venli has bonded a spren, very similar to the Knights Radiant, that these surges aren't only for humans. That the Parshendi can get these as well. It might be more difficult for them because they don't have all the forms at the same time that I think helps humans to be able to do what they do. Because we look at someone like Kaladin, he has to be able to see all angles of what he's doing to progress in his surges, and that's very difficult for someone who can only be one form at a time. And also because of it has the uppercase of the unmade in this. Makes me feel like it's trying to
honor the unmade a little bit more.
So one says, crafted of gods, this form we fear. By unmade touch, its curse to bear.
That's 51st.
And the other one, that's the 51st. The other one says, though crafted of gods, it was by unmade hand. So, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Sjatanat. And how she corrupts Spren. You know, like what she did with
so you're thinking
Renarvins, with Gliss.
You think she may have corrupted smoke form, or the whatever,
or
spren.
Or perhaps the
spren
Spren
that do smoke.
Yeah. Because that's kind of her shtick.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is the third line in the 127th stanza, bring it round again. It's a command. And this one, the third line, do we dare wear this form again? It spies. Which sounds much more honest to me. I maybe this is just because, I like to compare things to Mistborn. It just feels to me like this is a ruin-like corruption of something. And
which again is what...
Well,
it's kind of Sjatanat's shtick.
Yeah, it is her shtick. Well, it's also... I wish I could remember where this was from. I remember they talked about the oral traditions, because, a a lot of oral traditions have a lot of repetition in them. And part of it is so that you remember it. And so having two different stanzas say different things is sort of a hint at, you know, the repetition being somewhat corrupted. And it's sort of a check. And so you see two things that don't agree, that, you know, in different verses. And that tells you something's amiss. I don't know what, but something's amiss.
One of them's wrong, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't know which one.
No. Well, it's because it lies and it spies.
It lies.
Lies.
It's always fun to find the rhymes in poems. As long as they aren't like, I like poems that rhyme some, but not like every single line. Then it's a little too rhymey for me. But
It's just interesting. Also, going to your Sianat theory there. Void Spren are so similar, but slightly twisted from the regular form, or not Void Spren. What the
corrupted?
Yeah, the corrupted Spren. They're all.
What was it? Enlightened or?
oh goodness.
I think it was.
Is that the term?
I think corrupted was the word that.
Right, but Sianat, I believe, calls them uplifted or enlightened or something.
I am going to look because I can't.
And so.
But yeah, but it's just because it's close enough that Shallan recognizes them. She recognizes what it's supposed to be. And yeah, it's very similar. I don't know, but I like it. I like that Brandon throws it in because it's clear he's trying to draw attention to this. You don't do this by accident when you have editors like he does.
This is something Brandon does, is he hides secrets in plain sight. And it's infuriating and impressive and wonderful. All right, Jordan, why don't you take us into the Listener Song of Secrets?
Okay.
The 17th stanza.
Night form predicting what will be, the form of shadows mine to foresee. As the gods did leave, the night form whispered, a new storm will come, someday to break. A new storm, a new world to make. A new storm, a new path to take. The night form listens.
This one is intriguing.
What's it listening to?
Well, for one thing, remember, mind to foresee, predicting. These are against Vorinism, deeply against Vorinism.
Yeah.
Because these things are of odium. Although, interesting enough, cultivation is very, very good at foretelling.
All the gods on
good.
some level seem... Well, the gods. Shards seem to be on some level.
Yeah.
At first, I kind of was comparing it to like the monsters that attacked in the memory that Dalinar had, that were attacking like the farm type thing, but I don't think that's actually what it is. But yeah, like you guys were saying, more like how it almost makes me wonder if it's like the complement. It's like the listener version of Truth Watchers, maybe.
That's kind of the feeling I got, actually.
The reason I really like that, because I was thinking the same thing, is Truth Watchers use the surge of illumination to reveal the truth.
And these guys go dark.
Yeah, and this is called Night Form. It's sort of the opposite.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Actually, that
A new storm
I want to
will
talk
come
about something, but
someday.
I think we need to talk about the Listener Song of Spren, which is the last thing I have in here before we get into it. Okay, so this one is, the Spren betrayed us, it's often felt. Our minds are too close to their realm that gives us our forms, but more is then demanded by the smartest Spren. We can't provide what the humans lend, though broth are we, their meat is men. But it is not impossible to blend their surges to ours in the end. It has been promised and it can come. Or do we understand the sum? We question not if they can have us then, but if we dare to have them again. So, here's my theory. Based on this, I think it's the difference between bonding a lesser Spren and the sentient Spren. Like, difference between bonding, say, a flame Spren or bonding a wind Spren versus bonding an honor Spren.
Yeah.
because it just feels like, it says the
smartest
Spren betrayed us.
Spren.
I think those are the sentient Spren that they're saying betrayed them because they bonded to humans.
Yeah.
We can't provide what the humans lend, though broth or we, their meat is meant. And so with night form, I wonder if that's sort of what would happen if they bonded a light Spren like Gliss.
And it would just
I don't know.
go that route, and it would go the different
Remind me
route
what creation
with the
Spren
listener.
is?
Creation.
That's
what do you mean?
what Shallan was doing.
Yeah,
when she's
is
like
that
drawing
would you
and-
consider that a higher Spren?
No.
Okay.
I don't think
I would
so.
basically the theory that a lot of people have proposed regarding shard plate is that it's made of lesser Spren that they draw when they're doing stuff, and creation Spren are what Shallan has drawn towards her.
So the reason I asked that is because later on it talks about how in the Song of Revisions you need creation Spren for art form. Going with your theory,
Which is the lesser Spren.
Yeah, going with your theory there, that would make a lot of sense that they're trying to find, like, they can't find the uses for these higher Spren. And so they think of it as a betrayal because Spren are, their minds are closer to humans, but to the cognitive realm of the
listeners?
humans. But the humans think, because again, they're all forms at once, they're able to pick up on dichotomies. And what was it that Pattern was obsessed with? He was obsessed with contradictions.
Or paradox.
Yeah, and paradoxes. But these are things that lesser Spren couldn't even begin to fathom. And I just find it interesting, as your theory goes, that what's the line? Where was it? Let's see. We can't. We question not if they can have us then, but if we dare have them again. I feel like that's another line that might have dual meaning. And because then who is them? You could have this line as if it's the regular Spren. Do we dare have them again? Do we dare?
Do we go to that level? Go down to that level again?
Or if it's the Void Spren, do we give in to what the Void Spren are giving us?
And all the risks and everything else that's associated with that, yeah.
Well, and then you look at what's going on with Venli. Like, I think we're going to get a big look into this in the next book.
Oh, especially because we're going to have all the flashbacks to Venli and Eshonai.
Exactly. The next book is Venli's, and so I think we're
it's the
going to get a
listener
lot
book.
of... What's that?
It's the listener book. It feels like with them having all the flashbacks is we're going to get a lot that way.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get a lot of insight into this, particularly since Venli has bonded a sentient Spren with Tamber.
Yeah.
And so so this last stanza, it is not impossible to blend their surges to ours in the end. It has been promised and it can come. And Venli is kind of the fulfillment of that promise. Fulfillment of that promise. Or do we understand the sum? We question not if they can have us then, but if we dare to have them again. And because they were, in their minds, betrayed by the Spren, because the Spren bonded with humanity.
Yeah.
And did better with them, apparently. Though broth are we, their meat is men. It's basically saying they kind of, we're good
okay
for them, but they cast us aside because
that's
men apparently enrich them even more. And so there's that obvious and understandable feeling of betrayal because they've been doing this for generations upon generations, and then suddenly these upstart humans come from who knows where.
It reminds me of... This is a weird story. I tried really hard to be good at golf when I was a teenager, but I suck because I have another lack of coordination, an inability to make my arms and feet do what I want them to do in coordination with one another. Then one time, my dad and I went golfing with some friends, and his son, who, he was on the football team, natural athlete. He didn't have clubs, so he just played with mine. And he was ripping the ball straight down the middle. I'm like, how many times have you golfed? And he's like, this is like my second time. And it pissed me off because he's using my club, so there's really no way to get around what the problem is, and it exists between hands and the keyboard to mix the metaphors. But it's
really mixing metaphors.
Humans are sort of the natural athletes when it comes to the cognitive realm and the deeper concepts because of their weird contradictory nature in comparison to the Parshendi. And so to them it does seem like a betrayal, but at the same time it's more just they came in and naturally fit this niche that they hadn't done. At the same time, the listeners are very studious. And it's interesting to me that Venli's the one that has finally bonded a Spren, because she is going through severe guilt for one. But she's the one who's been considering the implications of these things after the fact. Eshonai was so focused on the needs of her people, because she abandoned who she was once she became once she shifted from being the wanderlust person. She went straight into crap, I got to get my act together, get this stuff
she
done.
took on responsibility and went deep into I am responsible, this is what I do.
Whereas Venli she's felt betrayed. Like, it hurts her that suddenly Eshonai was the favorite daughter and all this stuff. Well, she wasn't the favorite daughter. We find out the mother really does prefer Venli, and it's heartbreaking. But
Venli never visits.
Yeah.
Suddenly Eshonai is not necessarily the favorite daughter, but she's on the Council of Five. And Venli's like, I've been here, I've been steady, I'm the one who's been stayed
here
at home.
And so it makes sense to me that Venli's the one that ends up bonding a Spren, because she has spent a lot of time studying and thinking and trying to understand these very contradictions that they're going through. And it's a very human-like thing, which is very difficult to do in one form. And I just find it interesting that she's the one doing this. And so it's almost like she had to sort of watch how the humans did things and ponder upon it. And then in doing so, she attracted Timbre.
Well, speaking of betrayal, we're going in a little bit different order than I was planning, but the 40th stanza of the Song of Secrets, it goes with the same concept. The betrayal of Spren has brought us here. They gave their surges to human heirs, but not to those who know them most dear before us. 'Tis no surprise we turned away, unto the gods we spent our days, and to become their molding clay they changed us. So it's basically, there was a betrayal. The Spren, quote-unquote, abandoned the Parshendi for the humans. And, thought.
Okay.
The humans are called the Void Bringers.
Yes.
What if the void is the lack of Spren?
Oh. And also, well,
when the humans came,
they weren't. I started to think that it was, getting put into slave form, but that didn't happen right away.
But when the humans came, the Spren abandoned them. The Parshendi no longer have Spren. There is a void within them.
I wonder if more of them went into dull form then.
I think of it more as void referring to odium. Because
I think there's a double. I genuinely think there's a double meaning.
It could be either. I mean, there's no reason it couldn't mean both.
I don't know. It's just a thought. But yeah, so it's just really an interesting look. And again, this all comes before we've gotten a good look into Parshendi culture.
Oh, yeah. I read these way too fast when I read them the first time. Looking back at it, I'm like, wow, how am I getting this much more out of them now?
It's so funny to me. Guys, I think we might need to, next episode, come back, because we've still got a bunch to go through, and we've been talking about it for a while. But I do just want to mention, I feel like it's a lot of people, particularly when they first start reading Brandon, I've read people and talked to people who say they're annoyed at these intro things. It's like, I don't understand it and stuff like that. And I'm just like, there is so much in there. And so there's just like, oh, I just skip it because I want to get to the story. And you know what? On your first read, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's worth going back and looking at these things.
So if you get annoyed with them at the first read, then I would say, just skip them for right then, read the plot, and then go back and read all of them. So you sit there and chew them all little bits here and there, so you can figure them out.
Don't we only have 3 more of these left?
We have the 27th stanza. We have the
final stanza of Secrets. We have the Song of Wars, the Song of Revision. So we're already starting to go over time, is why I'm saying.
And we can keep theorizing about stuff in the next.
Unless y'all want to go for a particularly long episode, I'm okay with that.
I'm just trying to think because we have. No, it's too far.
We've got about 4 to go through.
I think we can get through it.
All right, let's do it then.
Okay, so the decay form one. Can I read that one?
Yes, go for it.
So decay. This is the 27th stanza of the Song of Secrets. Decay form destroys the souls of dreams, a form of gods to avoid, it seems. Seek not its touch, nor beckon its screams, deny it. Watch where you walk, your toes to tread, or hill or rocky riverbed. Hold dear the fears that fill your head, defy it. I really thought this one was like super evocative imagery, in my head. That and I totally, with how we were talking about matching up. Oh goodness, the Knights Radiant and the Listeners, and this one I'm thinking of.
Edge Dancers.
No, not. I didn't think Edge Dancers. I thought
this one makes me think Edge
Dustbringers or dust. They're Dustbringers, right?
See, and this almost feels like the opposite of an Edge Dancer, like a corrupted version of Edge Dancer. Decay form destroys the souls of dreams, a form of gods. Seek not its touch, nor beckon its screams. Here it is. Watch where you walk, your toes to dread. And you think decay form. And what is Lift's ability is growth and life. What happens when she, what's the minor spren that comes around her is life spren.
That's true.
And so it almost feels like the perversion or the void light version of this.
I'm thinking Dustbringers as well, just because we do have a surge of decay.
I can see where you're going, Bill, but I kind of feel like it's the decay ones, because it's like if they're decaying everything, you're not going to want to walk on it. But maybe that's the too straightforward approach.
But that's what I'm saying is like it's the perversion of it. It's the reverse of it. It's the.
Well, to me, the reason. So, what's the positive of the surge of decay with the way it's burning? It's sort of an artistic thing that we see. What's her bucket? Malada.
I think it's Malada.
Yeah, we see her burning. These designs into it.
Into the wood. Yeah.
It seems to me like it's supposed to be sort of the creative version of destruction, where you're etching something away to create something. But this one talks about decay form destroys the souls of dreams.
Yeah, that's not art.
Well, it makes me think that what if this, the corrupted version of that, isn't so much about what it does in the physical realm, but what it does to things cognitively. Like, what if it can destroy Spren?
Ooh, that's scary.
And it's just the fact this one is so like the other ones. It's been like, don't do it. This one's no. Don't seek it. Don't touch it. Don't beckon. It screams, deny. It gives it several times. No.
Deny it, defy it.
It almost feels like the first half is avoid it at all costs. The second half is if you enter, this is how you should proceed.
Yeah. If
watch where you walk, your toes to tread, or hill or rocky riverbed. Hold dear the fears that fill your head. Defy it. It's almost like don't let go. Like the fears are kind. It's almost like
be afraid. Be very afraid.
You can't have my pain. Hold your fears. That will keep you safe.
Which is
if you let go of the fears and give them up, then it will overtake you. That's kind of
whatever this is, it seems bad.
Yeah. That's a nope. Nobody nope.
But it just there's the other thing when we were talking about the surge that Malada has. You know who else has that surge? Is the Skybreakers. I am terrified and excited to see what happens when he starts using that one.
I'm looking forward to it.
Because he's at least working for Dalinar.
Well, it's
all right.
It's perfect for them just because it just sounds like divine retribution, that they're going to come down and just leave nothing but husks.
Ugh.
Yes.
So creepy.
All right, Jordan, you want to read us the final stanza of the Listener's Song of Secrets?
Oh, did we already do the 40th?
That was the form of power.
Okay, cool. All right.
The smoke worm.
Our gods were born splinters of a soul, of one who seeks to take control, destroys all lands as he beholds with spite. They are his spren, his gift, his price. But the night forms speak of future life, a challenged champion, a strife even he must requite. I don't know what requite quite means.
Refute, like go against, kind of. Right?
I'm blanking on the proper context for this. Let me look up a specific definition. It's
like the beginning, our gods were born splinters of a soul. That's ad nauseum.
To make appropriate return for a favor, service, or wrongdoing.
So this echoes of the end of Oathbringer.
Yeah.
A challenged champion. Our gods were born splinters of a soul. That's clearly they're splinters of Odium. Brandon has confirmed that they are
Odium. Okay.
That the unmade are splinters of Odium.
Splinters of Odium. Okay.
Of one who seeks to take control, destroys all lands that he beholds with spite. Mm-hmm. They are his spren, his gift, his price. But the night forms speak of future life. A challenged champion. And so the challenged champion, Odium's champion, that is what we are waiting for. Mm-hmm. That is one of the big things that we are waiting for, is because Dalinar has challenged Odium, and Odium has to name his champion.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the fact that it says the night forms. I'm assuming, it's talking about the forms that see the future, night forms. Mm-hmm. It says, a challenged champion, a strife even he must requite. If we go back where it's paying them back, what does he want Dalinar to do? He wants him to give him his pain.
Okay.
And so, a strife even he must requite. But we go back into the double meanings here. He was also had his memories taken from him, and they were given back by a different god. Mm-hmm. And so it says, but the night forms speak of future life. Is that meaning they're predicting the future of Dalinar falling, or are they predicting we can be saved when Dalinar gets his memories back and, does everything?
See, I'm seeing a strife even he must requite is basically even Odium will be bound by this. Mm. If the challenge is issued and he accepts, even he has to follow this. That's how I see it.
Well, it's the vagueness of using a single he in that sentence.
Oh yeah, playing with pronouns, it's all sorts of fun. And
fun.
If you want to be vague,
just stick to one.
Then don't have a proper antecedent for all the pronouns you're using,
or just be clever like Mistborn, where it's like, oh no, it's they use the genderless form, so it could mean either, and you're just like, Brandon, he told us, dang it.
Okay, let's move on to the Listener Song of Wars.
That's me, right?
Go for it.
They blame our people for the loss of that land. The city that once covered it did range the eastern strand. The power made known in the tomes of our clan. Our gods were not who shattered these plains.
Okay. So,
this is the Song of Wars.
would it be I'm trying to think. Was it Nottin? Was that the city that was on the Shattered Plains?
Yes, because that's the center.
I know
where they
because
have-
there's new Nottin now, and I think
Yeah, this
Nottin
is-
was the old.
Yeah, and that's where they.
This just sounds really silly.
Not,
No, it's not Nottin. No, it's new Nottin. But this Nottin.
Stop it.
do 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 do. Nottin. Do 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 do.
Wow. Okay, so they blame our people for the loss of that land.
So the listeners.
Essentially, it's saying the Parshindi aren't the ones who shattered the plains. The power, or at least it says our gods were not who shattered these plains. So I'm thinking that this was actually called down by humanity.
Wonder if
and
it's the knights.
You
Do we-
know
'cause
that
we don't know who
every
did it.
time anybody asks him anything about the Shattered Plains, Brandon giggles to himself because he knows there's something coming. There's some big reveal coming about what exactly happened there.
Power made known in the tomes of our clan. They don't tend to have written word, actually. That's what's interesting.
Now they don't.
Yes, but
Perhaps they did before.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what's the power made known in the tomes of our clan.
I'm wondering if that's the forms.
That's possible.
Because
That's
that
very
would be
possible.
their forms of power are their different forms.
Could it also? So this is the other thing. It's fairly well hinted that Adonalsium had a huge hand in shaping this world as it exists.
Correct.
So to say our gods were not who shattered these planes, that could mean all sorts of things.
They have too many options.
I don't think it's referring to Adonalsium, though.
No, I don't think
Just-
so
'Cause
either.
that's-
But
because it's
Okay.
saying plural, not singular.
yeah,
Well, that just means it wasn't our gods. It could be one other person, but it wasn't this plural group.
Okay.
I feel like this
my-
might be not a god that did it, but something maybe with the dawn shards, whatever those are.
Well,
Oh, who knows?
my personal thought is this is one of those set the device to critical or set it to self-destruct, and just we had a load-bearing boss or some heroic sacrifice or some spiteful, denial of access.
If I can't
know-
have it, then no one will.
I almost really hope it's actually just incompetence of some way. That everyone is sitting here like, no, it's your fault, no, it's your fault. And it actually was just like, someone put the intern in charge and he didn't put the right switch on, and then no one noticed it because everyone was overworked. And then, sort of like the Chernobyl disaster, but, with surges.
Pure
Surge Noble.
tinfoil. No. Pure tinfoil hat. No reason other than a gut feeling. I'm betting that Noadon had something to do with it. I feel like Noadon had something to do with whatever happened to shatter the Shattered Plains.
Dang it, Noadon.
And again, I have no evidence, no concrete evidence, just sort of a conglomeration of soup of what I've read forming in my gut saying Noadon has something to do with this. That's all I got. So, and I fully admit it.
Hey, tinfoil hat. It's fun.
We know he's a good cook, so Noadon soup might actually be pretty good.
Yeah.
He can make shin bread, after all.
Okay. So the listener song of revision, 279th stanza. I think it's interesting that we only have one stanza and it's the 279th. Is art form for colors beyond our ken. For its grand songs we yearn. We must attract creation spren. These songs suffice till we learn.
The colors
So-
beyond our ken reminds me of Warbreaker and how
Yes.
there's the colors that only the returned can see.
It's almost like, again, these songs suffice till we learn. I feel like this is sort of their what they send into the, this is what we're sending into the future for later generations.
It's our nursery rhymes.
Until we find our way back to this. It's almost like, the ancient civilization has put a time capsule. Until we find our way back to where we are now, this will have to suffice, and this is what we'll pass on. This is what they will know of us until they're able to actually finally make it back to where we are today, because they knew that they were taking a step back.
Yeah.
Two things on this from a scientific angle. Talking about colors beyond our ken, there are a lot of animals that can see colors we can't, because they actually have more it's cones or is it rod in the eyes? I can't remember. Anyway,
it's both. I think they have both.
And so they can see different, like, it's not just like they can see colors we can't. And there's certain human beings who even can see certain colors that others can't. And they'll talk about, oh yeah, it's yellow, blue. And you're like, you mean green? No. And they'll say stuff like that because for them, they actually can see this difference, and it's impossible to explain. I'm wondering if, in some level, the different forms might not be able to actually see full colors. Like, what if they have, like, dog-like vision, where they actually can only see specific colors? And so they talk about colors beyond our ken. This form might actually have just better vision and can see things the others can't in a very literal way. The other part is Bill's thought about sending it forward, because they say we must attract creation spren. These songs suffice till we learn. It actually reminds me of a lot of actual scientific, you watch CSI and they're, it's like, all right, we got the boot off this guy and we know that it's got this, there, and thus it only had to happen here because it's the only place these three things meet. Boom, 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 we got it. Meanwhile, actual science is just like sort of, all right, we know that this thing does not have barium in it. And that's sort of what real science tends to be, is us figuring out what it's not until we can eliminate everything. And so it says, we must attract creation spren. We don't know how to do it. We just know that we got to attract creation spren. And so to me, it just reminds me of a lot of our research, where you find out we don't know how to fix it, but we know we got to do this.
Oh, it reminds me of the light bulb quote with the, he didn't have just one success, he had like 1,000.
Oh, Edison with the,
Yeah, the
I didn't invent
didn't work.
one light bulb, I discovered 599 ways
that
didn't work or something.
Yeah.
There's a reaching for something that is beyond them. It's like, these songs suffice till we learn. It's like, until we actually are able to achieve it, we'll have to make do with what we've got. Someday we'll find it, the Rainbow Connection, the lovers, the dreamers,
and me.
See, and I was thinking bare necessities.
On that note, okay, so regarding our giveaway, I messed up. Basically, I forgot to post any way for anyone to enter, so right now we have 0 entrants.
I thought then I win.
And no, that's not how it works.
Oh, okay.
Then it's me.
I misunderstood.
So for this giveaway, we are still going to be giving away a paperback copy of Words of Radiance. And so keep an eye in the next day or two, hopefully. Actually, by the time this is up, hopefully later today, if you're listening to this on Wednesday.
Hello to listeners of tomorrow.
In the future.
Anyway, hopefully I'll have it up by then, and it'll, just keep an eye on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to figure out how to enter the giveaway. Again, special thanks to Brandon Sanderson's online store at store.brandonsanderson.com for all of these nifty goodies that we get to share with you, our listeners. We love hearing from you, so keep on sending in your questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your ideas for topics you'd like us to discuss during the show. You can tell us what you think of us as, just people. But be kind.
We're people too.
While you're at it, we would love to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing on the show, as well as any interesting theories that you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we could read it as a part of the show. Or, if you'd prefer to send us a physical letter, we have a P.O. Box at the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. Of course, we each have our own personal projects. Amy, what have you got going on right now?
It's my birthday week. Anyway.
Happy birthday week.
Thank you. I'm not saying my exact birthday because this is the internet. Anyway.
That was a kazoo.
It's great. Anyway, so I have family in town, and we're all practicing social distancing and all that jazz. Anyway, so I'm kind of busy with that, but I am printing a Queen Eleanor crown for my friend who's helped me make my Queen Eleanor dress. So I will be working on finishing that a little bit and getting other things done, as well as stuff for bonus content for patrons, which we will tell you about later once that's more done. So that's exciting. And I delivered mist cloaks on Thursday, so that was cool. So Bill, we all have mist cloaks now.
Well, Amy spoiled what I'm doing in my free time when I'm not running around our entire neighborhood wearing a mist cloak and scaring the neighbors.
I didn't say my things
It's a problem. We've had the police involved at least 3 times.
Anyway,
they don't bother me when I tell them I'm Hope. They get it. They're with us. Anyway,
So my Facebook's Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp, because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my website is www.coincidencecosplay.com. On to you, Jordan.
all right. You can find me on twitch.tv/splicestream. I want to thank all my viewers there. We actually just had our best month ever as far as viewership, so thanks. And you can find me on Twitter @splicestream, and any of the Amiibo or XCOM shenanigans, we do it. And we like it. And we love you.
Huzzah.
Yeah.
And as for me, when
I was going for sincere.
Wow. As for me, when I'm not here, I have another podcast with my friend Dylan. It's about board games, which are awesome. It's called The Innkeeper's Table. Right now we've got, I think we've got the first 3 episodes plus an introductory episode posted. Plus tomorrow, which would be yesterday if you're listening to this on Wednesday, we will have a special bonus episode that it's shorter than the others just because we had to cut a bunch out that we didn't like. It just sort of, the topic itself ended up being kind of odd. I mean, it was a good topic, but we were talking about board game jargon, and we kind of started listing specific terms, and it just was like we were reciting a glossary, and it just wasn't good listening. So we cut that out, but we still had a good discussion about how gamer jargon kind of works. And so there will be a bonus episode for that. And then this Friday, there will be a new episode. And every other Friday morning, there are new episodes. And it should be available on pretty much any podcast service that you've got. So, take a look and join us because it's awesome. We also do have a bunch of board game reviews over at www.innkeeperstable.com. And I also post about games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at @InnkeepersTable. For those of you who do want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies podcast, but you can't become patrons just yet, we would love it if you would just let your friends know about the show. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. Now, any final thoughts about these songs, guys?
They are so deep. Oh my goodness. It was craziness.
I think Brandon's a mad genius.
He really is.
Because
I didn't really think about it before we did this tonight. I didn't like the whole idea of these things having purposeful double meanings that, because it feels to me like he's sort of basing these songs on sort of Hebrew Psalms tradition, which a lot of times do have double meanings and on purpose.
Or triple or quadruple.
Yeah. And so, because this would be a sort of a new way for Brandon to do things. I think Brandon's always constantly trying to not make sure he's tilling the same field he's done before. And that actually makes a lot of sense to me as something he might try and dip his toes into to keep us guessing.
Yeah. No, the fact, again, I feel like Brandon probably has some smug moments when he hides these secrets in plain sight. Surprising but inevitable. Surprising but inevitable. Dang it, Brandon, why are you so good at that? Now, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/innkeeperstable every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else that carries podcasts. Just do a search for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we're going to be talking about board games. Specifically, we're going to discuss the game Mistborn House War, which we all played together on stream a few weeks back. There will be a video of our playthrough posted very soon. So make sure to go to twitch.tv/innkeeperstable on June 15th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, and join in the discussion live. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.